Hello and welcome to the fourth lesson in our course, Social Psychology. Now, in the first three lessons, we've covered ways we better understand ourselves and others. Now, that knowledge gives us a solid base that helps us navigate our world. Now, in this lesson, we will look at how we influence and are influenced by others. Everything we have already learned will continue to be built upon as we now come to understand, at least for this lesson, persuasion, and in the next, conformity, and in the coming and in the future lesson, we will talk about group influence. Now, in the last lesson, we learned that our evaluations of things, our attitudes, can be changed. Sometimes by our own inconsistencies, but often through persuasive communication attempts. Now, this lesson is divided into two videos. In this video, the first video, we will focus on those persuasive communication attempts, and as well as our own attempts to persuade others. In the next video, we will focus on how we process these attempts, and then when they are most successful, and how we can resist them. So, we spend our days persuading and being persuaded. You may have just emailed your teacher asking for an extension, or tried to get your mother to give you allowance even when you are studying at home. You might also have had two ads pop up while you were on Facebook. One is for an amazing new bra, and another one is for that pair of shoes you have added to your cart in Lazada. So, persuasion serves as an important function in a social society. If you're not successful in persuading others, you could miss out on job opportunities, or have poor relationships, or no relationships at all. If you are unaware of persuasive attempts, then you could be taken advantage of. Just to be clear, when we say persuasion, it's a method of changing a person's cognition, feelings, behavior, or general evaluation, which we call attitudes, towards some object, issue, or person. Now, before we delve deeper into our lesson, I want you to think about a few things. So what you can do is to pause this video while you answer these questions. So I want you to take a moment and think about who tries to, number one, persuade you on a daily basis, and whom do you try to persuade. I want you to make a list of these people, and what kinds of things do these people persuade other people, their friends, their family, or their enemies. So to do, no? And I also want you to answer the question, what are the different techniques people use to get these people to do what they want? So again, you can pause this video right here and answer your questions on a piece of paper or on a device that you are using right now. So once you have answered this question, let's talk about the goals of persuasion. So, a research done by Rule in 1985 set out to determine if we have a persuasion schema, or a package of behaviors or tricks, if you may, for how we persuade people and are persuaded by them. They completed 3 different studies to find out these answers. In the first study, they asked participants to report whom they persuaded and who persuaded them. They found that students reported others were persuading them more than they were actually persuading others. So, when asked how they persuaded others, a list of 12 reasons or goals was generated. You can see this 12 goals of persuasion right here. The first is obtaining information. Like when when you ask someone to give you an answer in an assignment. The second is obtaining some object, like when you persuade someone to lend you their motorcycles or their mobile phones. The third is obtaining permission, like when you ask your parents if you can already have a boyfriend or a girlfriend. The third is, or rather the fourth is, getting someone to do a favor, like when you want someone to write the introduction of your research for you. The next is changing someone's opinion, like when you want to convince someone that one candidate is better than the other. The next is getting someone to engage in an activity, like when you want someone to get vaccinated or register as a voter for the coming elections. So the next is buying or selling something, like when people do live selling on Facebook. The next is changing an existing relationship, like when you ask your, or rather when I asked my then girlfriend to marry me and she agreed to that. The next is changing someone's personal habits, so like when you want your brother to quit smoking. Some people also use persuasion to help the persuader, like when Tony Gonzaga interviewed Bongbong Marcos, or to help a third party, like when you serve as a tulay for your friend because he is too shy to express his feelings directly to his crush. The next is getting someone to do something against self-interest, like when you ask someone for help and they really have to go out of their way just to help you. Now, the question here is, how do these responses match your answers? Your answers were from the activity earlier. Are they similar? Are they different? Or do you have a totally different set of reasons for persuading someone to do something for you? Now, in the second study, they Rule et al. Took this list of 12 reasons or goals for persuading and asked the participants to write all the way, or rather all the ways that they could achieve these persuasion goals, and then rank them by most likely to use. So here you will see the 15 approaches to reach persuasion goals. The first is by asking directly, where no reason for the request is given. Like when someone tell you to just vote for a particular candidate but no reason is given for doing so. The second is invoking personal expertise. Like when, because the persuader is an expert, you should adopt their attitude. Like when people say that they lived through the martial law years and life was prosperous then, and expect you to believe this. The third is by invoking personal needs. When we say needs here, is that it's the needs of the persuader and not the persuaded. The next is buttering up. When this happens when the persuader makes the person feel wonderful or important. In Tagalog, this is pambobola. The next is invoking role relationship. Like when someone who wants to persuade you tell you that you are not a true friend unless you do this for me. The next is bargaining for the favor. Like if you do this, I'll do this for you. The next is invoking a norm. Like when they say that everybody is already doing it, or when people say that maraming TikToker ang nagsabi na golden age ng Pilipinas ang martial law years. So the next is invoking moral principle, like telling the person it's the right thing to do. 9 is invoking altruism, like I'm not like when someone tells you that, or when someone or a candidate tells an interviewer that he's not running for president for themselves, it's for the people they will be able to help in the future, so you have to vote for them. 10 is offering bribe. So you'll be given money if you do a particular activity. 11 is emotional appeal, where the persuader sulks hoping that the target will feel guilty. Now, this is like guilt-tripping someone to have sex with another person. This is bad. 12 is personal criticism, telling someone you're lazy, you're never gonna do anything. 13 is deception, or like tricking someone into granting the request, like providing fake news to make a person believe someone is a good candidate. Um, the next is through threat, and the last is through physical force. So, um, how many of these approaches were similar to the approaches you used in the activity that we had earlier and the approaches used on you by other people? So you may want to contemplate that. Did someone just use threat to influence me into doing something? Did someone invoke their expertise or did someone just use personal criticism on me just to get me to do something they want me to do? So um, let's now talk about the routes to persuasion. Now, our days are spent navigating the enormous amount of information that are being sent our way. We get up in the morning and browse Facebook to see the latest news stories. We check our emails and we have 13 emails from coworkers, families, friends, and in my case, students. Our social media is full of advertisements trying to sell us the latest products, and as we drive around town, there are billboards advertising stores and those annoying Run Sara Run posters. Now, which of these pieces of information or persuasion attempts will be more successful? Which ones will persuade us to do something, to buy something, or change our attitudes about a certain candidate? Now, the first step in understanding persuasion is to examine how we process or think about these persuasive attempts. It is important to spend a lot of time thinking about all the information that we are bombarded with. Or rather, it's impossible to do that. We would be driven mad or pushed to mental exhaustion if we are to spend our time thinking about all the information that we are absorbing. So, as motivated technicians, we will be very selective of the moments we use our limited cognitive resources. The small set of information that we select will be fully analyzed and investigated. Everything else we come into contact with will be responded to automatically. We won't spend much time thinking or considering, but rather automatically responding using our mental shortcuts or heuristics that are triggered from the context of the information. Now, we have what is beautiful is good heuristics. These mental shortcuts result in us automatically connecting the source's attractiveness with the qualities of being good, kind, smart, and etc. For example, Ted Bundy, the serial killer here, was considered attractive and would lure women to their death by asking for help. Now, the women he asked were happy to help. They automatically responded to the what is beautiful is good heuristic, assuming he was kind and trustworthy, and they went to help someone who would end up killing them. So, researchers Petty and Kakyopo and Petty et al. And Chaikin found that that there are two ways of thinking that best fit into a dual processing model. So we either follow the deep, thoughtful path, which the researcher called the central route or systematic processing, or we follow the superficial automatic path, with which the researchers call the peripheral route or heuristic processing. For example, during election, some people believe their lives will not be affected by the turnout of the election. Since in their eyes, the election is not about them, they are not going to follow the central route. So they will probably follow the peripheral route. So that whatever the turnout of the elections would be, they may blindly vote candidates just to fill in their ballots without knowing who these candidates are and what their platforms are. However, there are those who believe that election turnouts will directly impact their lives. Because it is personally relevant to them, they are probably going to follow the central route. So these people will probably think about their decisions, and they may even go out of their way to know about the candidates. Now, those people who believe that they will not be affected by the election will not waste their precious resources thinking about the candidate's platform. Now, the other reason we will follow the central route of persuasion is if we are able to think about it. In order to be able to think about it, there's a need to be limited, or to limit distractions. We can't rush, or we can't be rushed or in a hurry, and we have to be able to understand the message being presented to us. It also helps if the message is repeated and written down. If a candidate wants to persuade you to vote for them, but their message is full of jargon and scientific information you can't follow, then you aren't likely to pay attention to the message or be persuaded to vote them. So, if a candidate, or if candidates want people who find the issue of election personally relevant to get on board, they also need to give them time to process the message, and they need to make sure that the message is something most people can understand. It would also help rather if they have an opportunity to see it more than once and can have read the arguments in their own pace. So this is where TV advertisements and Facebook advertisements of candidates step in. So the situational determinants of being motivated and enabled are key to following the central route, but there is a dispositional determinant as well, the need for cognition. This concept deals with enjoyment from engaging in effortful cognitive activity. So, individuals who score high on the need for cognition cognition measure spend more time carefully processing the message, following the central route to persuasion. So remember that if you want, or rather, the central route to persuasion might be effortful. It might take people more time to decide on certain things, but the central route persuasion end up with lasting change in attitudes. And in many cases, when individuals follow this and are able to process the message, they will hold that, they will be persuaded for a long time. Now, as noted earlier, it's adaptive for us to rely on heuristics and automatic processing of our world. It saves us time and our limited cognitive resources. Now, for the majority of us, we mostly follow the peripheral route or heuristic processing. So, in the context, or rather the context or the situation that the message is delivered is more important than the actual message here. So here the saying goes that it's not what you say, but how you say it is very applicable. Now, these contexts or situation cues trigger automatic response as we quickly move forward in our lives. Remember our example from earlier where people who don't think that election turnouts will affect their lives directly. Now, they are most likely to follow the peripheral route to persuasion. They are busy with their own lives and they really don't have the time to think about who to vote for. And since they believe whoever wins will not impact them, they really don't care who, rather to spend time carefully evaluating who's a better candidate. So how can candidates persuade people like this? They need their automatic acceptance from situational cues. They will probably be persuaded by people who look good or people who are popular, And if they are in the mood, they will probably also go along with what is presented. In fact, this is what many candidates did in past elections. Some candidates used celebrity endorsers, some banked on their own popularity as celebrities and sports icons, and some even danced budots. And these schemes actually worked. It's clear that we need to examine the persuasion situation more closely to understand exactly what our persuasive attempts will be most successful. Our motivation in persuasion will determine which path we want our audience to follow. If we want a more permanent attitude change, we will want the person or group we are attempting to persuade to follow the central route. If we just need them to go along right now or buy something once or just vote for us in the coming elections, then the peripheral route is a better choice. Now, this ends the first part of our lesson in persuasion. In the next video, we are going to talk about factors that lead to successful persuasion, and we will get a closer look at cults and explore the dangers and how to resist persuasion. Again, my name is Dex Kamitan, and thank you for watching.